With the supposed Nintendo Direct this month, everyone is talking about what games we are going to see, but I'm actually wondering if we are going to see any new hardware revisions, or if it's too early and they're saving it for later. We already know that some Switch Pro revision is happening because of the Wall Street Journal article back in October of 2018 stating that it was in development for 2019. We also had the article a couple weeks back where 5 industry analysts talked about where they see Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo going in 2019. Some actually point to 2 revisions for Switch because of syncing 3DS sales and even a Switch with attached Joy-Cons to decrease the price. So other than that, we don't really know anything about what it's going to be in terms of specs and power. So, I want to talk about that a little bit and what I want and also what we could expect. So just as a quick point of reference, I wanted to mention that the new Nintendo 3DS released about 4.5 years after the original 3DS. Back in 2015, and it added more processors at better speeds, more RAM, and also doubled the system memory. Now that was a 4.5 year gap, and right now the Switch is not even 2 years old, but I wanted to just kind of state that so we have at least some point of reference as to what Nintendo does in their revisions. I would really like to see a better CPU, which would in turn contribute to better battery life, hopefully better resolution, and also frame rates, both handheld and docked. I really think it would be cool to see a 1080p screen in handheld, as well as making the screen a little bit larger. Also, let's get double the system memory and increase it to 64 gigabytes. I don't really think that there would be any Switch Pro exclusive games, even though we do know Nintendo has done this in the past. So one example was that they actually ported the original Xenoblade Chronicles from the Wii over to the new Nintendo 3DS, but you could not play it on the original 3DS. I just really don't see Nintendo doing that at this point. The Switch isn't even 2 years old yet, and we're already getting a lot of third-party support, and even more this year with games like Doom Eternal, Mortal Kombat 11, etc. And as far as we know, those will be running on the original Switch, so I just really don't see them making games that are exclusive to the Switch Pro. The only way I see that happening is if there's third-party games that developers really want to bring over to the Switch, but they just can't get it to run on the original console. Other than that though, I really would believe that all first-party Nintendo games are going to be compatible with both systems. I do think one thing they could do though is maybe release a game like possibly Pokemon, or maybe even if like Metroid comes out this year, they'll release that with the Switch Pro, and maybe there's some sort of gimmick with that new console that will work well with those games, and it won't necessarily ruin the game if you can only play it on the original console, but maybe it'll just be some sort of incentive to get people to make that upgrade. But with everything in mind, I really do think Nintendo has to release some Switch Pro this year, just for the fact that Microsoft and Sony are likely going to be unveiling their next generation consoles this year, maybe even releasing them late this year, but more likely in 2020. And with the Switch already lacking in power with the current generation consoles, if the next gen consoles release and there's no Switch Pro, it's going to be really far behind, and then I'll doubt we'll see any third-party titles coming over. Now, what I think is more interesting is that a lot of these analysts are also talking about another revision coming out in addition to the Switch Pro, which would be a Switch Mini or Switch Lite. Actually, what's really interesting is Nintendo is pretty much already doing this. If you go to the Nintendo.com page for Japan, you'll actually see something called a Nintendo Switch Second Set, and it sells for approximately $230 US. It comes with only the Switch body, 2 Joy-Cons, 2 Joy-Con wrist straps, but it excludes the Joy-Con grip, the AC adapter, the HDMI cable, and the dock. So this is not something that's available anywhere else except for Japan. And also, if you look on that page too, they're even selling different special editions that we haven't seen, including a Monster Hunter edition and a Minecraft edition. And when you buy your Switch, you can actually customize the Joy-Con colors as well as the straps. So that's pretty cool. I hope they really bring that over to other countries as well. So with this in mind, Nintendo is basically already releasing a handheld only Switch version in Japan for $230. So what I think they're going to do this year, in addition to the Switch Pro, is release this second Switch set version that's in Japan everywhere else, and they're going to sell it even cheaper. So instead of about $230 US, I think they're going to try and get that down to about $199, because then that will directly compete with the new Nintendo 3DS XL price of $199. So you might ask, how can Nintendo do this? How can they sell the Switch for that cheap? Well, the Switch is almost 2 years old at this point, and we know that manufacturing costs go down over time for a lot of reasons. So not only do I think they're going to release this second Switch set that's handheld only at $199, I think they're then also going to reduce the price of the original Switch. Maybe not by as much, so maybe like $20 or so. So we might see it come down to $279 permanently, but they might just leave it at $299, who knows. I think they may even give the whole Switch a redesign, so even the original Switch will get sort of a redesign, just quality of life features. But either way, I think this Nintendo Switch second set that's handheld only makes a ton of sense. Now the last thing that this leaves is, what about the Nintendo 3DS? Isn't that going to sort of phase out the 3DS and really hurt its sales? The Nintendo 3DS is already seeing declining sales, and I think Nintendo knows this. I think this year they're really going to try and phase out the 3DS. If we look at all of the franchises that are coming over this year, we have Animal Crossing, Pokemon. Those have both been handheld only franchises completely, and those are coming over to the Switch. We also have a series like Fire Emblem that's been mostly handheld, also going to be coming on the Switch soon. We have Yokai Watch 4 coming to the Switch, and that's been exclusively on the Nintendo 3DS as well. And if we even look at what games are coming that are currently announced for 3DS, the only ones we have are Kirby's Epic Yarn, which is coming March 8th, and that's a remake of the game on the Wii. We have Shovel Knight King of Cards expansion, which is coming April 9th, and that's already on Switch. We have Yokai Watch 3 coming on February 8th, but again, Yokai Watch 4 is coming to Switch. And then we have two smaller titles that I'm not even going to name that are coming to 3DS that don't even have dates yet. So that's it. So that's 5 titles that we currently know that are coming. I really think Nintendo's going to put a big focus on pushing 3DS owners to convert over to the Switch this year. If no 3DS games are announced either before or at E3, I'm basically going to consider the 3DS to be dead. But here's the thing, if you love your 3DS, that's great. I loved it too. It's got a huge library of games that are really awesome, but the thing is, it's dying. The sales are not doing well, and Nintendo knows this. So if they can get that second Switch to be released this year, to be handheld only, and at the same price as the new Nintendo 3DS XL, I really think they can push some of those owners to come over to the Switch. I think this makes the most sense for a Switch Lite. I know one of the analysts in the articles that I mentioned, they talked about how they think that they may do like a Switch handheld only version where like the Joy-Cons are attached. And I really just don't see them doing that, because that sort of just ruins the whole functionality of the Switch. The whole point is that it's multiplayer. You take it wherever you want. You instantly have 2 controllers with you at all times. And I just don't see them doing away with that just to reduce the price. Especially since they're already selling a handheld only version in Japan for $230. Even if they don't reduce the price of that, I still think even at $230, that's a pretty good price for a handheld only version of the Switch. But what do you guys think? Is 2 revisions crazy? Is it way too early for Nintendo to announce them? And also, I'm curious, would any of you buy the Switch Pro or even a handheld only Switch? Let me know in the comments below.